Hi, I'm Rachel Miller, Director of All Things IC. Welcome to this session. Throughout the next 20 minutes, you and I are going to take time to think about how to transform your internal communication in 2021. Now, what does transformation actually mean? When I think about transformation, it reminds me of clay. It's about us molding and shaping something into a new shape. Now, the best example I can give you of this is thinking about Play-Doh. Now, my children love Play-Doh. I'm a mummy of 3 young children, and particularly my 6-year-old twin sons. They love a pot of Play-Doh. I'd love to tell you that this is their Play-Doh. In fact, theirs looks a lot more like this. This is their actual 4 pots from their stash. Now, these aren't the colours that they started out. They love getting stuck in, using all sorts of implements they can get their hands on to mould and shape and transform Play-Doh into all sorts of different creations. If you look at the lids, you can see we actually have to write the name of the colour on it because it doesn't look like the pot anymore. So the yellow there, you can see is much more of a, well, orangey red, I think is more appropriate. Now, if I think about transforming an organization and I think about molding and shaping it into something else, the most important thing is that you know what you're starting with. You know what the original color is, if you like. So think about your starting point. If you come out with a statement like, we want to transform our internal communication in 2021, brilliant. But what's the starting point? What shape are you in right now? This is really important because in order to think about transforming your internal comms, you need to know your starting point. Transformation is going from one thing to another. So without knowing your starting point, it's really hard to measure and it's really hard to track your success. So I encourage you, if you're watching the replay, do pause at this point and jot down this question. And if you're watching live, then I encourage you to think about this, make a note of this. What does transformation mean for your organization? So the statement to answer is transformation is ... Now, there's not a magic answer here. There's not a blueprint here that I can give you because it's unique to every single organization. So what does transformation mean for your organization? Make a note of that. And then I encourage you to test it. So what it means for you might be different to what it means for your teammates or your peers or your stakeholders. So why not test that? Before we zoom off into 2021, let's think about what do we mean when we talk about transformation. I believe it's really important to set your intentions when it comes to transformation, particularly transforming your internal comms. Now, if we think about the humble caterpillar, he doesn't just go from being a caterpillar into being a beautiful butterfly. There's a process, there's a series of steps he or she needs to take to get them from caterpillar to butterfly state. The same is true for our internal comms. If you're thinking about transformation, what are those key milestones, those key steps along the way? You can't just go from one thing to another. You need to iterate, you need to evolve constantly. Spend time thinking about that. What does good look like? What does success look like? What are the steps that are going to get you from A to B? Through this session, I'm going to share a couple of things with you that will help you focus on the transformation. And I've broken it down into 2 different parts. The first is mindset, and the second part is skill set. Now, it's important that we think about both if we're thinking about transforming our internal comms. So let's start with mindset. There is a temptation right now in January 2021 to step on the gas. There's a sense of we need to hit the ground running, we need to start doing things, we need to start rolling things out. But before you do that, I encourage you to pause, reflect, and analyze. Take time to think through the last 12 months. You cannot achieve 2021 internal comm success with 2019 thinking. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this time 12 months ago. Think about the mindset that you were in when you were planning your 2020 internal comms. You were doing so with everything you knew about the preceding year in mind. The same is true for this year. When we're planning our 2021 internal comms, we need to be mindful of everything that's happened over the preceding 12 months. We've encountered so many different things over the last 12 months. We've maybe had to furlough employees or make employees redundant. We've had employees working from home. And if we think about the press and the media and maybe your own internal comms, how we've talked about that has normally looked a bit like this, with people, juggling with caring responsibilities, with pets, with children perhaps, and it's all a bit like this. However, is it really actually a bit like this? Are our employees feeling burnt out, anxious, tired, overwhelmed, exhausted, overloaded, and had a big adrenaline crash? I certainly know from the conversations that I've had with clients and comms friends, that adrenaline that kept us going in crisis mode very, very quickly became exhausting. This is where we're at right now. If we're planning for 2021 transformational internal communication, we need to do so with an accurate mindset. You need to reflect the reality of your organization. It's not all jolly hockey sticks right now. There's a lot of people feeling these emotions. You may well be feeling these emotions too. So we need to use emotional intelligence. We need to be listening and tapped in and tuned in to our organization to make sure if you're planning on transformational internal communication, you do so from a mindset of reality. So what do we need to be mindful of in 2021? We are loading up the year and we're thinking about all the things that we talked about in 2020. And perhaps you talked about belonging. We want to create a sense of belonging in our organisation. Or maybe we want to connect our frontline workers a bit more to be one organisation. Or maybe you talked about trust and increasing employees' trust in your organisation and in your leadership team. Or maybe you said for 2021, we need to do more about diversity and inclusion. The things you need to be mindful of are the promises that you've made. What promises did you make to your employees last year? And if you're not sure, ask them. Be really tuned in and tapped in to your organisation. I believe it's our business to know our business as internal communicators. So think about all the promises you made and all the things that you need to keep for 2021. I believe what happens inside is reflected outside. I had this beautiful artwork created when All Things I See turned 5 back in 2018. And it's got a dual purpose for me. If I think about an organisation, I believe if you have a positive culture, it seeps out. I also believe if you have a toxic culture, it seeps out. So that's one way that I use this thinking. Another way that I use this thinking is to think about the mental health and well-being of employees. What is happening? What is showing up on the outside? Is it all the words that we just saw on that slide? Is it actually what's happening inside? Is they are struggling, they are stressed, they are anxious, they are scared, they are tired, or maybe they're doing okay. They've built up some resilience in 2020, but we need to make sure we're tuned in, we're tapped in, we're listening, being mindful of what is happening inside our organisation, because that will show up on the outside. The impact of our employees feeling like this is maybe productivity goes down. You'll see it in your attrition rates or your retention rates. It may also be that customer service changes. This isn't a soft and fluffy thing. It's business critical to understand what happens inside and how it shows up on the outside. There's often a mindset of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that's dreadful for internal comms because we need to be constantly improving, evolving, and iterating our approach. The mindset we actually need is a growth mindset. And what I mean by that is we need to really understand what's going on and the reality of our organization. We need to take stock. We need to constantly looking for ways to improve. So we're thinking about pressing that start button. We're getting ready to transform our internal communication. And there is that temptation to just zoom on in. Oh, sorry, gone backwards. There we go. Something I encourage you to do before you press the start button is to really create certainty. As humans, we crave certainty, particularly in times of change. However, if anything in the last 12 months has shown us is that we can't predict what's going to happen next. So what I look for when I'm planning internal communication is to create certainty. And I use a model which is my known knowns and my known unknowns. It's really straightforward. Get a Word document or a document or a piece of paper in your notebook, score it down the middle and map out my known knowns and my known unknowns, and then write it down. So let's think about 2021. What are your known knowns? You may know that you've got a new product and service coming out. You may know that you have a merger and acquisition. You may know that your CEO is leaving, for example. But your known unknowns might be the dates, the times, who's involved, whether the leader's going to be replaced. So get it all out, write it all down and look at it. And it helps me to really plan effectively and prioritize effectively by creating certainty when it just feels like chaos or it just feels like it's all very, very turbulent. So do that. Write down the certainties, your known knowns and your known unknowns. I've created some statements here. I'm just going to move myself so you can see that one. There we go. Created some statements here, which are comms principles. So you could think of these as outcomes. These are statements that I normally find inside organizations where comms teams use them to hold themselves to account. So you may have statements like listening to employees and taking their views seriously. We have employee first content. We're one organization. And we often find these sorts of statements, and I'm sure that you'll recognize these. You may well even use lots of them. I encourage you, if you're thinking about transforming your internal comms, how are you going to hold yourself to account? Now, it might be you use your vision, your mission, your values, the purpose of your organization, or maybe there's an opportunity to create a lens which focuses on internal comms, and it's your comms principles. So I use comms principles as a check and balance. So particularly if I'm auditing or analysing internal comms in an organisation, I'm looking at what do we say about ourselves and how does this be true in our channels in our organisation. So if we say we have united leadership, for example, where's my evidence? How can I see that? How can I see the photographs of everyone on a virtual call if it's not all sat in the boardroom together at the moment? Where's my evidence? So think about that for your organisation. I wonder if you could do something like that and use comms principles. Just going to move myself back. There we go. So mindset plus skill set equals transformation. And we've talked a lot about mindset. Let's focus on skill set. This is the best example that I know of in terms of the skill set you need to be an effective internal communicator. On a page, this is what good looks like. This is the profession map from the Institute of Internal Communication, IOIC. Now, this first came out back in 2016, and then it was republished and refreshed at the start of 2020. And this is everything you need to do, everything you need to be, the skills, expertise, the knowledge that you need. What I particularly like about it is not just the 6 areas that are in blue. These are the core bits. You need to nail this, get these areas sorted. But it's the behaviors. I love the behaviors around the outside. Some gorgeous words in there. You need to be empathetic. You need to be tenacious. Well, I was getting into that then. You need to be, I find it so empowering. You need to really be good at these things because this is how you show up. This is how you show up in your organization. So you need to be challenging. You need to be curious. I love that. What makes you a good storyteller is if you're curious, if you're always asking why, you're getting to the roots and the heart of the story and the problem. Makes great content, great, compelling internal communication. Now, the best bit of this model is the PDF that goes with it. It's really detailed. It's on the IOIC website, and it's also, I write a blog about internal comms. It's also on my blog at the link on the screen, and that helps me spot the gaps. So if you're trying to transform your internal comms, you're thinking about your skill set, but actually you look at this and go, yeah, I'm all right at doing research, but I don't think I'm very good at curating conversations, or maybe I'm good at planning, but not so good at strategy. This gives you the blueprint. This gives you an understanding of what good looks like, where you can spot your gaps and you know from a skill set perspective what you need to improve. It's an awesome piece of work. So it's the IOIC profession map. Check it out if you've never seen it before. Your future self will thank you. When I have conversations about how do I be a brilliant internal communicator, the word strategic often gets banded around. And also coupled with that is trusted advisor, where people will say to me, "Oh, Rachel, I'm a trusted advisor." And I say, "Great. How do you know? How do you know what a trusted advisor is?" Sounds brilliant. When I think about being tactical or being strategic, and these are words that we use a lot on internal comms, I've broken it down and translated it into reactive versus proactive. I pretty much guarantee that if you're thinking about transforming your internal comms for 2021, you want to move away from reactive internal comms and be much more proactive. But you've probably couched it in language that says we need to be strategic. But what does that mean? What does that mean for your stakeholders? What does that mean in how you show up as a team or as an independent practitioner? Think about how you can be more proactive. And that might be things like doing an editorial calendar, for example. It might be doing things like 30, 60, 90, 120-day plans, for example. It's about doing the thinking before you zoom off and do the doing, which is the tactical bit. When we think about the skill set we need, I encourage you to think about what's going to stop you. So we've had all of these conversations and all of these thoughts, and we've got a couple of good models in there, but what is going to get in your way? It might be your leaders, it might be your channels, it might be that there's something you wanted to do last year, you've not had a chance to do that you know is looming for 2021. I encourage you to answer this question. And really, it's down to barriers and blockers. What is it that's going to get in your way? And therefore, what do you need to prioritize as a result? This is really important. You can have the best, beautiful laid plans in the world, but if you're not aware of what's going to get in your way, they might trip you up or they might be a surprise. So take time to do that, invest time in doing that, and really take an opportunity to pause, reflect, analyze. And if you're not sure, think about what stopped you last year. It's not just coronavirus. Think about what stopped you last year. What were the barriers and blockers that you had? I also encourage you to think about what you want to keep from 2020. I've been asking my clients this question quite a bit recently because it might be that your leaders, for example, have got comfortable doing their own videos in their spare bedrooms, like I'm in now, and they don't need us to hold their hand. Actually, that's brilliant. There's a less reliance on us as internal comms professionals, and there's more resilience and more capability from our leaders. Awesome. Let's keep that. Let's not go back to the way things were. Let's not go back to having to have hand holding and scripting, for example, for our leaders. So you'll have your own examples. Do take time to think about that. If you're thinking about transforming internal comms in 2021, what are you going to carry over from 2020? What is it that actually you want to keep and you want to make sure you keep on doing? It might be a channel as well. This is my intentions framework, and I'm sharing it with you because this is how I measure internal comms. Before I do anything, I am really clear in my mind what I want people to do, say, think, feel, and sometimes add differently. So do, say, think, feel differently as a result of my communication, and how do I want them or need them to behave. It's quite straightforward, and it's really important because if I haven't set my intentions, I haven't got a hope of measuring. If I'm not clear what I want to achieve from a poster or a video or a campaign or initiative, how can I possibly measure? So you might have a version of this. You might have do, say, feel, or think, feel, do. For 2021, if you don't have feel in there, if you don't have emotional intelligence in there, add it in. That's going to be absolutely super critical for all the reasons we've already talked about. So I'm going to draw us to a close shortly. And in doing so, I want to encourage you to really take time to think through how you're going to transform your internal comms in 2021 by thinking about action planning and prioritizing. So if you cast your mind back, particularly over the last 12 months, what is it that you need to stop? Sorry, it's falling out. What is it that you need to stop, start, or continue? And that's important because if you're trying to make a plan, it's important that you're really clear in terms of this isn't adding value, or you know what, this is a really good thing that we've introduced. We need to do more of that. We need to continue doing that. So think about it in that way. What do we need to stop, start, or continue if we want to transform our internal communication? So we've looked at mindset plus skill set and how you need both to transform your internal communication. Thank you so much for jumping into this session with me. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. My details are on the screen there. And best of luck with transforming your internal comms in 2021. Thank you.